All right. Good morning. Welcome to Sunday Civics. Thanks for joining us today, either recorded or live. A couple of things that I had wanted to talk about every week if we could, and that's journalism, because without local journalism, without information, we never know what's going on. And it seems like there's a lack of it for whatever reason. Newspapers have been in the decline. How do we reverse this, right? However, I've got a different view lately that I won't even really ask Mark about right now, but is journalism, local journalism, in the decline, or is it intentionally being killed? That's my kind of question. When a pension fund or an investment fund buys the Chicago Tribune, it's kind of like a Wall Street movie with Michael Douglas. They're just going to divest the pension fund, sell the equipment, and get rid of reporters, right? I mean, that's it. I live my life by the movie, so that's what seems to happen. But I won't ask Mark that because he's not here to defend the entire journalism world. Niagara Falls, which is our target area for the study of civics. So, Mark, welcome. Thanks for coming on this morning.
Morning. How's it
Beautiful
going?
setting there. Is that your neighborhood?
It is. It is beautiful LaSalle in Niagara Falls, or as they say, LaSalle. A lot of people say that.
LaSalle.
So, yes.
Are you one of the LaSallians who thinks you should secede from the city and it never should have been merged? Are you okay being part of Niagara Falls?
No, there should never have been a merger. I think
Oh,
having a neighborhood like that is interesting. It's neat, sets you apart. It's like DeVoe and these places. These are little kind of kitschy communities, but you're not kind of swallowed up by the entire city that way.
But from a civic standpoint, you wouldn't suggest that LaSalle and DeVoe should have a mayor and a council and a staff.
I would actually, maybe. I don't know. Because I know that when it snows here, we very often do not get a snowplow, as I've said to you many, many times.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's unique to Niagara Falls. I mean, it's not unique to my neighborhood. It's just a Niagara Falls thing where just, there's no plow for hours and people are shoveling streets and shoveled in, and not always, it ebbs and flows. Sometimes it's better than others, but maybe you would be better off if LaSalle was a little fiefdom, as long as it's well run. I mean, I'm for anything where the people get the services they're paying for, right? I mean, however we do it is fine as long as it happens.
Yeah.
Amherst is Amherst because it's Amherst,
Yeah. Well, let me cut you off. I didn't mean to ask you that because you're here because you've spent 20 years writing local news, and that's why I always love talking to you. So
the bona fide miracle.
Is it a bona fide miracle?
It is. You know how hard that was to do? I mean, that was a difficult task. Staying in the news business for 20 years in an internet age is a difficult thing to do.
Well, you're still in it. We're acting like this is your living obituary. You've got 20 more years of doing this, so you're right in the middle of the sweet spot. Where are we going with news? Because I need it. We all need it, but it seems like it's under attack.
It's definitely in a transition, and I apologize. A very large truck is going to come by and make a lot of noise in about 30 seconds here.
It's a snowplow. I know it's a snowplow. But go ahead. Didn't even hear it.
I muted it because I'm not technologically savvy.
Okay.
We're in a transition, so we're moving away from traditional newspapers and we're moving into all these other sorts of things like Investigative Post, where I work, which is an online news organization. A lot more partnerships for sure. Less traditional writing stories, more video, more tweeting, more whatever comes next, right? I mean, reporting is reporting. People always want to know what's going on around town, or a lot of people do anyway. And I think it's important that we have like vetted information that's not just internet information that says reptiles run the government, or whatever the thing of the day is.
To that end, one of the things that is my absolute pet peeve, the most horrible thing in the world, is that people don't talk to reporters anymore. They don't return phone calls. They don't answer questions. They bolt themselves in behind doors. We're going to talk in a few minutes about the Cuomo situation. To me, whatever he's going through, the biggest crime he's committing every day of every breath is that he won't talk to the media. He released a taped response. When Elliot Spitzer, unfortunately, we have a history of this in New York State. We have recent memory. Elliot Spitzer did this same thing. He went before the cameras. Their wife stood next to him. It looked painful for both of them, but they went before cameras. They didn't answer questions, but we've reduced ourselves to talking in sound bites with no reporters. So is that something you face as a reporter, that you can't even ask people questions?
Well, I was just in Genesee County chasing after the economic development people out there. And, you know, the guy who's their spokesperson said, I never emailed them or asked them. I emailed them April 30th because I went back in my records and I looked and I said, let's have a talk about this. And they don't answer. So here we are in August, and I couldn't go to meetings before because of COVID. So we went to the meeting and they would not do an interview. And there's, you know, I mean, you stick a microphone in their face and say, I want to talk to you about this. And they say no. At one point, a gentleman who I believe may be an attorney for them, he wouldn't tell me his name. I said, who are you? He said, it's none of your business. That person is very likely there being paid with taxpayer money. So it's our business. It's people's business.
Right.
And at Cuomo for a minute, Cuomo, unfortunately, is a huge distraction from the larger picture. We're not a one-person government. And now this allows the entire state government to focus on one guy. When in fact, as Angela Morinello is going to tell you later, we have a government that has a legislature. We have local legislators. I mean, very few people can really touch the governor, right? Even reporters have a hard time getting at him. But there's more to the government than that. I think that's part of the educating people about, you know, what is your government? You had a couple weeks ago or last week, a union rep from the city that, again, just in terms of his job, you know, take away the person, and just in terms of his job, this is a guy who you can agree or disagree with. He's part of this process of mowing lawns, right? So somebody should hear from him. We should have an understanding what his point of view is. The city council, the mayor, that's how this all works. That's how we either get a snowplow or we don't.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes we get into these conversations. The governor will be covered by 48 news organizations every moment of every day. And where are we as a state, as a community? Where's Niagara Falls? Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, we're not talking about what's important here. I mean, it's not important. It's important, right? What's happening with the governor is very important. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is there's a lot of coverage about him, and that's not necessarily the entire government, right?
What do you think the solution to that is? That it's become, it's not just the governor, but it's all the way down to every local level of government, that people don't talk to people anymore. They don't answer questions, and they walk away. How do we change that?
It's the same solution it's always been. It's hard work, it's effort, and it's attitude, right? I mean, I don't take no for an answer a lot of times, and I keep trying. If I can't get to somebody that I need to get to, I go to their house. And that might sound like I'm a stalking, you know, whatever, I don't know, but you have to get, again, I believe that if you're going to sit in a public office, you should take the heat when it comes, and you should get the credit when it comes, right?
But nobody called that attorney and said, hey, I'm Chuck Schumer and you work for us and you better answer questions. This doesn't happen. I don't care how much work, you know, you can do, but
no. And I think it's one of the reasons why a lot of people have sort of tuned out of newspapers, media. There's fewer people, you know, at the Gazette where I work, there was sometimes 3 people for two full editions of a newspaper, you know, 6 days a week. I mean, what kind of quality can you put in? How much effort can you put into trying to, you know, I have the luxury. I can spend more time on a single story, and I can spend more time trying to get after people to get some answers, you know, and that's been going away. And I think the next thing has to be, you know, it's sort of cyclical. When I started out in newspapers, I worked at a place called the Journal Register in Medina, which is no longer in existence. It's a small little paper in the middle of Medina in Orleans County. And we had execution style shootings in cornfields of drug dealers. We had undercover cops stealing motorcycles and things from drug dealers. We had a state investigation into it out there. I covered incredible things I never imagined I would cover in Orleans County. There's nobody there. I mean, they have a couple of online news sources, but the paper went away, and gradually the number of reporters shrunk, and the consistency isn't there, and on it goes.
Mhm.
But my point about that was that paper was formed by Bob Waters was the last guy who owned it, but I believe it was his grandfather who formed that paper. He got up one day and said, this community needs a paper.
Mhm.
And I think that's what's going to start happening across America. And it is happening. People are going to, like Jim Heaney, my boss, is going to say, let's form a news organization. We'll get the internet and we'll get a computer and we'll run stories. And that's where we're at, I think.
So I'm of a certain age where, I used to just turn on the radio and get my news, buy the newspaper, and I got all my news. And then I subscribed to cable. One cable company gave me everything. And now it seems like cable is fracturing. People are cutting the cable, and I have to subscribe to Disney Plus or ESPN separately, $4.99 a month. The newspaper, in various places seems to be not what it used to be for news. So I have to subscribe to something else. Do you think we can adapt to where I can locally pick and choose from a different menu board than I used to, just be lazy and wake up and listen to WBEN and get all my news? Are we able to change? Is that how it's going? I did become a subscriber of Investigative Post because I needed to. I needed to know what was going on. Do you think that's where it's headed?
I think it's already there in some respects. I think a lot of younger people probably are getting information, and this is a problem too, because there's a lot of bad information. There's a lot of made up stuff. There's a lot of people who are really attempting to steer people to thinking that's not real or untrue, not factual, for their own purposes. That's a real thing. That's not a made up thing where the Russian get on a computer and pretend to be, a Second Amendment advocate or something.
Your sound kind of cut out. There you go.
Well, as I said, the good part is there's sort of a democracy of information where a lot of people can participate. The bad part is that allows for people to spread bad information or false information, and that can be dangerous. So
in Medina, do you think, not specifics, that the cops are still stealing motorcycles or the equivalent, that there's still a gangland sling in a cornfield or an equivalent, and there's no newspaper, so we don't know about it? Is that still, the world is still the same as it used to be? We just aren't reading about it.
There's always something, right? When I was in Medina, the first big story I ever did was about the hospital CEO, who was a beloved human being in the community. He was on the front page of that newspaper every single day. One day, a cranky guy called me and says, "Do you know what the hell you guys are doing over there?" I said, "No, sir, I do not." He said, "That guy's ripping us off." Okay. He's stealing money from the hospital. He spent $200,000 on his office or some nonsense. I said, "I need some information." The next day I got an envelope with some internal minutes from a hospital meeting where they were discussing the situation. The hospital was going bankrupt and the beloved CEO was responsible. And I wrote that story, and he was out and 3 board members were out, and they did a rally and they saved the hospital. So we never really know who's, it's important to really pay close attention. That's why it's important to have reporters who are doing a thorough job. Unfortunately, we've created a lot of, I'm a writer, but I'm a reporter, right? And there is a difference. I've told a lot of young people, you can be a writer, but if you're going to be a reporter, people are going to hate you. And it's what it is, right? Some people deal with it better than others, right? You think an officer who's been involved in something like stealing from drug dealers wants that made public? Obviously not. It's not going to be a pleasant conversation.
Yeah.
And with the hospital CEO, so you have to sort of have that jaded view, I guess, or cynical view, or the what if is always a possibility, and that's not to. But you do your homework too, right? You have to go look for the information and find out if your instincts are correct.
So
and we don't have enough people like that around anymore.
So the beloved owner of the Medina Register woke up and said this place needs a newspaper. Is there, just a final thought, in our civics covering of Niagara Falls as our incubator project, is there enough coverage of the city of Niagara Falls? Am I reading everything I should be reading? Is there stories not being written? Is there an opening for somebody to wake up and say there should be more?
I think that's very true of Niagara Falls. We've talked about this many times before. There's no better place to build back better than Niagara Falls. And it's not there, obviously. And as a taxpayer, I can sit here and tell you, we've had discussions about grass cutting and it gets frustrating, right? And I think, and will the coverage change that? I think people have to pay closer attention. They have to be reading and watching it. And you do have a fragmented audience now. So what you produce has to resonate with people.
Yeah.
Very complicated thing, but it's a good discussion to have about, because information is vital. Sometimes when I talk to people, they walk away and they'll say, I never thought about it that way, because they're really not thinking about it that way. They're inundated with, what the governor's doing, right? I mean, we'll see 14 stories about what the governor is doing or is not doing.
Yeah.
But we have a city council. In some places we have village governments, we have town governments, we have, again, what do you want out of your government, right? At a certain point, you just want the basics.
Mm-hmm.
A snowplow, a police officer, grass cut,
Yeah. Well, Mark, I got to go already. Thank you so much. It's a beautiful scene there in LaSalle.
No comment on the Field of Dreams-esque background today.
It's a beautiful place in LaSalle. I wish I was there right now.
I never leave the house, so I have to sit outside. My wife kicked me out and made me go out here. So
thank you, sir. Have a great day.
Everyone have a wonderful day.
Bye-bye. All right, that was Mark Scheer, former editor of the local newspaper, the Niagara Gazette, and the Lockport Sun and Journal as well. But what Mark just said was, we're going to hear a million stories about the Cuomo thing. You're right, we're going to, and I don't want to be one of those stories, but we have a state assemblyman who represents Niagara Falls, who's a great, responds to every email within minutes. I emailed him late yesterday on a Saturday night, and he replied enthusiastically. Even if he would have said no, it would have been a nice, happy, enthusiastic reply. So I wondered, not what's going on with the governor legally, this, there, the other thing, but you're in the room. You're the guy or the woman who's sitting in Albany during a historic thing. I don't think we've had an impeachment of a governor in 103 years. So that was my question of Assemblyman Morinello, who joins us now on screen. What's it like to be an assemblyman today? Just fill me in what this is all about.
Well, good morning, Tom, Michael, Mark, and John. We're in very unsettling times. And I can tell you this, there is not the transparency to the assembly. Both sides, I'm not talking about minority versus the majority members, but it's unsure as to what is occurring. But I'd like to put this out as a little bit of a civics information. And in simplest terms, what is happening overall is similar to, I'm gonna try and compare it to a grand jury proceeding, whereby there would be an indictment coming out. In this instance, the investigation of the Attorney General is sort of that the indictment procedure, the grand jury procedure, and then they put out a report. Now in this, the report is public. In the grand jury, of course, it's not, to protect the witnesses. And so what we have is we have a 165-page report that we are digesting, and I have gone through the entire report. I've read the testimony of each of the witnesses. In this instance, it was the 11 accusers of sexual misconduct, sexual advances, improper touching. But what was interesting in the report, and I urge all who have questions to go and read the report, because the report contains other witnesses in each of the instances that would substantiate what was being said by the accusers. Now, as a retired judge, as an attorney, you're always entitled to the trial. And in this instance, that trial would be, if articles of impeachment are voted on by the Assembly, it would then go to the Senate for that trial. I feel that we should hold back on anything until the judiciary reveals their report, which I anticipate will be within 2 weeks. Reason being is that has been going on for a while. The governor has until next Friday, his legal staff, to present any further information on that investigation that they feel would be pertinent to the outcome. Through the grapevine, through things I hear, because the judiciary goes into executive session, which is rightfully so, and each of the members is sworn to confidentiality, so they're not really out there. So what would happen is I'm anticipating within 2 weeks that report will come out. That report is covering the nursing homes, it's covering the book, it's covering, from what I understand, the faulty bolts in the Mario Como Bridge and a couple other issues. So that to not rush to judgment, if there is articles of impeachment recommended, it would cover not only the Attorney General's report, but it would also cover the information garnered by the Judiciary Committee in their investigation, so that everything would be on the table. It would be open and transparent. And I think in this case, in fairness to the accused, the governor in this case, everything should be there, so nothing is left to chance or nothing is left to speculation. Internally, there's many discussions going on. Now, the Senate, I have some friends who are members that I've contacted, and they've sort of refrained from taking a position on whether they would vote for impeachment because they're the jury. So they don't want to be in a position to be predetermined as to what an outcome should be. And I admire them for that because there's been a lot of pressure to express. I am in favor of articles of impeachment. The reason is, like I say, it's kind of like an indictment. And I think that there has to be a full hearing. We can't just go on the report because there needs to be a little bit more. The governor needs the opportunity to present his. So voting in the assembly for an impeachment means we're just voting to push it to a full trial in the Senate.
So a lot to unpack there, but you're not in session now, so you're not actually sitting in Albany, right?
No, we're not in Albany, but we are always at the call of the speaker. So he could give us 48 hours to get back to Albany. I anticipate that'll happen within the next 4 weeks.
4 weeks, yeah.
That's just my speculation based on what has occurred up to this point and the pressures being put on, not only by the public, but by members of the majority. And there has been some polls by the AP, which basically they believe there's enough votes in the assembly to vote for impeachment. But remember, impeachment is not a final disposition. It's just merely let's have a trial. It's similar to the federal rules, except the difference here is in the state, the governor, or if the official who would be the subject of it, has to step down during the pendency of it. And then the order of succession would be the lieutenant governor. And then the next would be the speaker pro temp of the Senate. So if the articles of impeachment are voted on, those two would be precluded from sitting because they are in line of succession. So now, do they have an ulterior motive to be able to go to the top spot? There's another issue that people need to be aware of. There is also on the table the fact that the chief judge of the state of New York, has some conflicts. And there's discussions as to how do they diplomatically ask her to recuse herself. Now, one of the strange things is the firm that was picked to investigate it, her husband was a former member, but does get a pension from that firm. And from my understanding and what we've been able to garner, it depends on the profitability of that. So being involved in that, plus the chief judge has also it's been revealed, allegations of her rendering decisions on cases where there was a conflict that wasn't revealed. So that is also playing in. And then there's 7 members of the Court of Appeals, 6 members, and then the chief, all appointed by the governor. And when this all, I'm sorry, go on.
No. Yeah, I got lost there where it goes from the assembly into the Senate for a trial. Where does the Court of Appeals fit in and the Chief Justice?
Right.
Where do they fit in?
I'm sorry. I missed that step. Okay. So the trial is the 63 members of the Senate, less the Speaker pro tem, which is Andrea Stewart Cousins. Okay. Also, the Kathy Hochul is precluded, but they add the 7 judges of the Court of Appeals to that number. So technically, there would be 70 members of the jury, less the 1, which would be 69. Okay. So they were added to, and then the chief judge presides over that trial. So they become jurors.
Equal members, equal as senators?
Equal as senators, yes. Okay. And it's 3/4 of the assembly articles of impeachment are a simple majority. And right now in the assembly, there's 150 members, which would be 76 to pass. Of that, there's 106 Democrats, 43 Republicans, and 1 independent who caucuses with the Democrats. However, the reports coming out from the New York City press, with the majority, there would be enough votes to vote for it. Now, the strange thing is, in the history of New York, unless the majority has enough votes of the majority to pass something, they do not pass it or they do not present it. For some reason, traditionally in New York, they don't want the members of the minority conference to side with a minor number of members in the majority and then come up with their simple majority. So there's a lot of background in play in this also, but it just seems that there is enough votes. And one of the strange things is 2017, the governor championed women's rights and protections, and then 2019, additional. So his comments, which appeared to be blaming, re-victimizing the victims, outraged a number of the female members that may have been on the fence of the assembly that are now coming out strong for articles of impeachment. I think most people know I was the domestic violence judge for 10 years. So sexual abuse, sexual harassment is the psychological same as domestic violence. And to re-victimize the victim as a defense is something we see in domestic violence all the time, which really doesn't go anywhere. Okay. So I'm sorry, Tom.
Well, you're a former judge and the assembly. What do you think of the way time has moved on and the governor's a defense counselor, a staffer for the governor goes on CNN last night and publicly starts, making accusations and building a case in the media. It's not just in the assembly chamber anymore, or just going to the Senate. You've got staff for the governor going out and, painting victims or doing other things to the public. We're not going to wait for a trial. I know you're going to wait for a trial, but they're not waiting for a trial. Does that offend you as a former judge and a human being and a 70-year-old man?
I'm outraged, okay, because this is a typical, we're going to fight this in the press rather than wait for the court. And Tom, I don't know if you've had the opportunity to read the report, okay, but it's extremely detailed. It's not politically motivated. And when they come out and try and paint this as 11 women were in a conspiracy, okay, I think that's pretty outrageous. I believe their attorney or the counsel. Now, you know what I find interesting, if I may? When this first came out, my advice to some of my colleagues was, probably the way to do this is step aside, not resign, step aside, reflect upon what you're not following in the legislation that you've pushed, admit that just maybe you have some tendencies and go for counseling at that point. Stand up, be an upright citizen, be the leader, and lead by example instead of denying. And in the report, I find this interesting. At page, it's like 115, 116, his internal advisor said, be contrite, go for counseling, focus on that. And he poo-pooed it, and they went and attacked at that point. And I believe it was shortly after that they started releasing documents, okay, confidential documents. So he's fighting for not only his political future, but what he is fighting for is his legacy and his family's name.
Let me then also say, does it kind of offend you that one of those counselors to him suggesting a strategy was also a talking head on CNN? I mean, shouldn't CNN just have fired his brother for that alone to be part of your counsel to any politician?
Well, they're brothers. So if they're sitting around the dinner table having their Sunday dinner and they're talking brother to brother, I don't think I think that would be normal. But when you're talking about a CNN reporter who is actively and openly and putting it in writing what to do, spinning away from what the report is, I think then. And what else is disturbing is this, okay? And I can congratulate Mark Scheer that he does not let personal feelings interfere with his objective reporting. He does a great job, okay? He's not swayed, but he does do his job. I think that for Chris Como to not talk about it on his show, and normally the lead in is whatever the story of the day is, he abstained completely, which tells me he should have been taken off the air immediately. That's news, okay? And a good newscaster doesn't give their personal opinions or hide the truth. A good newscaster, a good reporter reports it as it is.
Okay, so we get into the weeds now. Let's fast forward, because this governor that we know, again, the toxic culture which was in the report.
Yeah.
You know, he's not going to go, but he's going to do whatever he can to stay. So say he's going to get convicted. What if he resigns? This is a question from somebody that's watching. What if he resigns so that you don't convict? Now he's not there to convict. He's got $16 million in his campaign account. He's going to probably have 30 by the end of this trial because he'll start fundraising like crazy. We're only, if you're doing this in October, November, we're only 4 months from petitions. What if he resigns, runs again, wins? Does the assembly have the right to impeach the next guy? I mean, now we're getting weeds.
I don't know the answer to that question, okay? But I will give you what I feel. Part of an impeachment trial, they could also come out with a decision to prevent that person from running again. Now, the allegations are based upon him being their employer, their superior, to having a position of authority over these individuals. Okay? It's not remote. It didn't happen before he became governor. It's not 20 years, allegations of 20 years before. It's not allegations of things that occurred when he was not the elected official. So now the impeachment would have to be what occurred while he was in that position. So if he resigns, he's going to be eligible to run again. That's number one, and that'll be up to the people. And number two, I interpret the law, and there's no case law because this is the only second time this has happened in the history of New York State. There's nothing that he does within the scope of that elected position that would be investigated. Now, that doesn't mean that there can't be criminal investigations. And we have to remember, if there's articles of impeachment, if the Senate votes and it's 3/4 that he should be impeached, that doesn't stop any civil or criminal actions. That just deals with his authority to govern.
So are you saying that he could get impeached, go to the Senate and resign like 2 weeks into the trial before they've made a decision? Like he knows the decision's going against him, he resigns. If I robbed a bank and you brought me to trial, I can't kind of resign and say, no problem. or when can he resign and not resign?
Probably before the end of a decision. It's kind of like a plea in a criminal case. Okay. Now it's not the same, of course, because there's not the penalty there. It's not the same. However, he could just, you know what, I'm done. I'm listening to some of the evidence. The ball game's over. That's what happened to Nixon. Okay. When Nixon was under impeachment. Okay. And it was going to the Senate. I'm sorry. Go on, Tom.
No. One final question, because and I don't really know how to phrase this, because it's the strangeness of what he's, up against, right? You've got the governor in this problem, but if you're the governor, not this one probably because of the toxic culture, but you need to call senators and assembly people about a bridge in their district or a policy decision or legislation before their committee, right? There's conversations that happen. When does that conversation dip into, Lyndon Johnson, hey, how's the trial going? I mean, now the governor does need to talk to the witnesses and the jury. Does that go on? Or is he never calling an assemblyman or senator until this is over? I mean, it becomes a problem, doesn't it?
Well, number one, there's reports internally that he did go to Hasty and asked Hasty to twist arms for those that were going to vote for impeachment in the assembly to change their minds.
Since the report?
Oh, since the report, yes. Okay.
Terrible.
Since the report. Now, I can't direct you to an exact conversation. You asked me what I'm hearing inside, and
right.
I'm telling you what I'm hearing inside. But it doesn't surprise me because of some of the report talking about pushing for things of this nature, closing things down, moving people, putting records out. There's one article, employee number one, who's one of the accusers, remembers in one of the meetings she was asked to bring in a whiteout to one of the advisors. And that report, which was a confidential report, had hand whiteouts in it before it was released to the press, which wasn't supposed to be released. So there is some substantiation that gives rise to, we need to go further with a trial. So we can go 2 hours on this.
I know. But, the day after Monday, I guess the report was released on a Monday, the day after the MTA, the subway, people in New York City canceled a meeting because of the report. They said because of the report. And I'm like, the business of the world needs to go on, not because of this guy. Why is the subway system, the most important subway in the United States, give a darn about whether the governor had a report? But it does. And we can't have the wheels of government stop because this guy's in trouble.
They cannot function. One of the commissioners came out with a statement that he must step aside or step down because the process of government for the people is coming to a screeching halt. Let's go through just a couple quick things.
Okay, quick, because we only have a minute. So
yeah, I know, John Rustino, I'm sorry. Okay, but look at what we've been faced with that has come to a stop. The Department of Labor software, unbelievable. Can't get the money out. The landlord fund, over $1 billion to help landlords through the pandemic. Think about it. Up till last week, nothing had been given out, and then now 200,000. They can't get the software. There are so many things that need to be corrected that can't be focused. 6 to 8 months to get a liquor license. They take the money, they cash the check, but they're not working. Nobody is working for the people right now. And I'm going to tell you what, it's like rats jumping off a sinking ship. They're all looking as to where am I going to go? Where am I going to fall in line? Is Kathy Hochul going to be there? Do I become part of her staff? And if I'm Kathy Hochul, she's going to have to be pretty careful. Now, I'll tell you what, I would be happy with Kathy stepping in. Okay, she's got experience irrespective of what some of the articles are saying. I think she'd be a great benefit to Western New York, and I think she could handle the job, okay, while this is going on. And I think the smarter thing is forget resigning. Just step aside, go to counseling, and let her run the ship, because the state's a mess. Nothing is getting done. There was money coming through the federal government that was supposed to go for these programs under this gun, the emergency pandemic, okay, on the guns. Niagara Falls Boys and Girls Club had 2 programs. They started initiating letter from the state. Hold off. We're not sure how we're going to distribute it, but these programs are helping kids. They're going through it. All right. They're hoping to get the funds later. So now you make it, well, it's the county. I got the records from the county. It's not them. It's the letter. They're at a standstill. And you know who's suffering? The residents of the state of New York.
Angelo, I would call you Angelo. I should say Assemblyman.
No, Angelo's fine, Tom. I've known you a lot of years.
Thank you so much for this, real bird's eye view. In fact, let's do it again when you hit Albany and see everyone coming at you and what it's like. I want to be a fly on your lapel here for the next few weeks.
Well, I've got your number and your email, so I will keep you posted. If I get something, I'll let you know.
All right, thanks. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, that was Assemblyman Angelo Morinello, always available, always willing to return a call on a moment's notice. So we thank that. So we were talking earlier about journalism. There's just too much going on. But one of my frustrations, which I think I vented a couple of weeks ago, is I want more local news and I want more local information. And yet I'm a product of a time when I just used to turn on my TV and flip through various channels. And there's other people that I respect, admire, and I puzzle at. How do they know so much? And so I try and find them and reach out to them. But it makes my head swim how I find how I can possibly find information. So one of the people that I reached out to, or always reach out to, is John Restaino, who's now with us with a Yankees hat on. Not that he's a real homer because the Yankees won 8 of the last 10, but we'll cut him slack on that.
Yeah, I'm a Leafs fan, so I'm not. I don't bandwagon. I will say this though, real quick, to follow up those 2 interviews. That was a great interviews. My goodness, Mark and the Assemblyman. I don't know. It's tough to come after that, but I'm here.
You're here, but you're here because you do this, very well. I don't want to make this a love fest or anything. I usually insult you when I talk to you as much as I can, but how do you find out so much information? And then how can I find out so much information? And how can we make that information more public? I'm frustrated that it's hard to find local information, yet it's all out there. When I see it, I'm like, holy cow, this video has 5,000 views and I never saw it. I mean, so anyway, how do you do that? How do you stay wired? How do you, and we should say, go to Gorillas Inc. However we find that, we'll post a link to it, because you've done multiple programming and you're only in the infancy of creating dozens more of multiple programming. And Mark, 20 years in the industry, just said there's plenty out there. So you're in the middle of it. How do you do it?
Well, for me, the information I get, and this is weird, and maybe Mark would be really good. I got to ask him more about. And I don't know if it's just, I get a lot of anonymous, but I know, it's not anonymous to me. I shouldn't say it that way. I get people who don't want to be named. And that's tough because it's a lot of information and they don't want to be named because they're fearful of something or someone. So I think that I've been here for a long time, and being who my brothers are, my dad was, I just seem to know more people than sometimes I even want to know. And then I find out things. Now I do want to know because I'm with Gorillas Inc., Citizens United. And sometimes, what's funny? I stumble across stuff that I don't even realize is happening. Just like you were saying, I mean, I'll just be sitting here and next thing I know, I get a message and someone's got something to say and they want someone to say it for them, but they don't want to put their name to it. A lot of that going on. And that's hard to deal with for someone like me who doesn't know, what do I know about journalism or anything except what I run by Mark or whatever.
To get back to civics and why I want to focus on one place, because if we talk about civics and then people talk about, Trump's an idiot, Biden's insane or senile, we get nowhere. Or if we talk about Bezos doesn't pay any taxes, I mean, it's just too out there. If we all focus on one place, say Niagara Falls, because it's an international brand, the entire world knows what Niagara Falls is. And then we say, well, how does it work? Because I love the falls, and yet it seems suboptimal to me because it has so much resources and is doing so little seemingly with all those resources, hundreds of millions of dollars a year. What do you find the same thing that what Jason Knight has on his Twitter handle is it's not broken, it was built this way. You know, the people that contact you, are they all frustrated that, you know, we're picking up shell casings again this morning? The state park doesn't share, the lawns aren't cut, the streets aren't plowed in the winter. You know, people aren't moving to the falls in droves. There's vacant lands owned by a billionaire in New York City. I mean, I don't know. Is that what you find of the frustration, why people reach out to you also, that they want it to be a little better?
Yeah, I mean, that frustration has been happening forever too. I mean, the grass cutting thing, the, you know, Goat Island, NFR. I mean, there's been complaints as long as I can remember about it. And, you know, the shell casings are different though. Like you're saying, that has really just happened in the last year. Those other things I've been hearing since I was since the 90s. And yeah, I just think that people do know that there is a media blackout. You can't go to City Hall and really talk to anyone at all. I mean, you're not gonna get to the mayor. I don't see anyone getting to the mayor unless it's a setup kind of thing. Public information officer doesn't seem to do much informing other than putting out press release type stuff, but she's not talking. So I think they know that. I think the people also know that the police are in a weird situation because we don't hear from them either. So I'm almost like the last resort, I think, is what ends up happening. Because I always think that if they're reaching out to me, I mean, I'm not trying to put myself down, but really, I do a podcast. We set up, we're only 6 months old, and there's people coming with really intense kind of stories. And, we're talking like, sexual assault, murder, robberies. And I mean, you know what? I'm learning on the go because I got to say, I'm not really equipped for some of that stuff, but I tried.
Getting back to traditional media or the old media, you might pass all those tips on to someone else because you're overwhelmed or it's not your thing. You know, you do this thing. You're having to do them yourself because I think I know there's no one to pass them on to, correct?
Right. No, there's no one. I've tried, and I'm not even going to say the places because I don't want to say, but they won't take it. And I don't know if it's because it's Niagara County, Niagara Falls, but they don't want anything to do with it. I mean, the D'Angelo case, perfect example. I mean, it's just not, it almost like it doesn't exist. There's a lot of things that are like that. And, you go out of here, even you think, well, I'm going to go to Erie County, maybe to Buffalo, maybe they'll help us. Help. No, there's no help. And we know the Gazette's issues. So, there's nowhere to pass it. And my partner Wade helps. I mean, we're learning. I mean, it's really not, who's a big help, and him, obviously, he was just on, Mark. Mark is a help because if I hit just for advice, that's all. Just give me advice simply. He doesn't ever do anything. Just I ask and he tells me, because, one thing you got to be careful that I'm learning is you don't want to get yourself in trouble either. I don't want to end up in, because lawsuits or anything like that. But yeah, Tom, there's nowhere to pass it. So we do the best we can.
That's my, I like to follow theories, but I don't know that local journalism is dying because there's no interest. Like we believed that for the last X number of years, 5, 10 years. Which is just, there's no interest. I mean, of course, local journalism's dying. I don't know if I believe that anymore. I think local journalism is being killed because, like Mark said, in Orleans County, the cops, used to do X, Y, and Z. And now, since it's not reported, are they not doing it? So if there's no media, there's no reporting of the media. When Mark was there, there was I would say not when Mark was there, but, a year or two ago, OTB was really on the hot seat because they weren't answering questions about who took Bills tickets and who did X and who did. It just died because no one asked anymore. And there's many cases like that. You mentioned the D'Angelo rape trial. almost no coverage normally. Rick Pfeiffer did write an update last week, but that's kind of a crucial story because the guy was involved. It's not just anybody. He's an attorney, but he was also involved in a lot of political campaigns. So, so I think is it being killed? I mean, if like Gordon Gekko, the Gazette is owned by an out-of-town concern. If we all ran a campaign to subscribe to the Gazette, please give your money to the Gazette. I'm not quite convinced they would give that to the reporters and hire more reporters. They would take it because they're a business and they would suck it into their bottom line and continue to say, cut costs in Niagara Falls, cut costs in Cleveland, wherever else they own papers. Anyway.
Well, no, I'm noticing, and I think you're noticing too. I mean, it's becoming, journalism is like a community effort. It's becoming, everyone has to be one. The George Floyd thing, you had that, if that woman didn't have the cell phone working, the camera, here in Niagara Falls, there's a lot of people doing stuff. You see it on Facebook and everywhere else. It's like a community effort. Because I can get the video from someone else, they could get whatever I'm saying. I think that's how it's being done. It's almost like a village, because that village type thing. Because I think that's the only way we can do it here. Because I don't think the Buffalo News doesn't seem to care about Niagara County or Niagara Falls. The Gazette doesn't care about Niagara Falls or Niagara County. It seems that's the pure pay to play kind of situation. And look at all those different sites that are there. We've talked about this before. They're taking video, incredible video. So they're there at 3 o'clock in the morning. It's great. So I think that's the only way to go, is like a community effort, because we don't have professionals to go to.
You mentioned a good point that somebody else has said this to me, and it's definitely the case. The most valuable journalist of the year last year, or whatever year it was that 16-year-old girl that taped the Floyd murder. I mean, she did it. Without that, the cop is still a cop. So do you think this isn't your goal, but sometimes you have to do what you just have to do what comes along. Do you think you can coordinate that? Either you or someone else coordinate this community effort, because that 16-year-old girl exists everywhere. And we need these stories out there if we're going to build a city.
Right.
So,
yes. And, real quick though on that, we right here in Lockport had the same situation, and it was on video, and it just didn't get any. It was basically George Floyd in Lockport, and Troy Hodges. I'm going to say, I'm sorry if it's Trey or Troy. I apologize, but he, it was the same thing, and video. But it got disregarded. I mean, it didn't even, it didn't really even make the news much, but it was there. You could see it. You can even listen to it. Yes, we do have to, the Niagara Falls dashboard is it's really in its infancy though. I mean, I think we talked about this one time before on here, or it came up. It's a work in progress, but when it gets going, it's going to be that one-stop, I hope, place for everything. Yeah. For those guys that are out there doing the video, but they won't, a lot of times they'll do the video, but they're not putting words to it, printed words, or they're not putting whatever, and yeah, that's what it's going to be. It's coming.
Yeah,
it is.
Well, I hope you can do it, because it's a valuable, we absolutely know that local journalism will build a city. It's integral to having a community and a vibrant community. So without it, we're nowhere. That's why I kind of harp on it as much as I can, because we can't do civics without journalism or information. We just can't. It makes us all better. So I know it might not have been your original mission and Wade's original mission, but please do it. I mean, to what extent you can.
I think, yeah. I mean, I've started to. I do enjoy it. My thing is I'm trying to learn the right way. I think Mark said it earlier. It can't be misinformation, because then that's a waste of time. Vetting stuff is a big deal. I've learned that, because in the past I just would say whatever I want on the radio or a podcast sometimes.
I agree. I agree. but being so careful, please be careful. But there's whole news organizations at the national and local level who are not careful at all, and they're doing the wrong thing intentionally. So
I know. You know, I want to say one thing too that's really upsetting. You were talking to the assemblyman about nothing happening now, because the governor, everyone's worried about him. God, August 13th is that deadline for the Child Victims Act. And that's not going anywhere, obviously. I mean, the governor's not going to worry about extending that at this point. So
can it be, what, it just goes, it's going to sunset because he's in trouble? I mean, for a lot of reasons, but.
Well, the 13th was the day, it was it. And it never to be returned. It's up to the governor to extend it. Why it wasn't just I don't understand, but after the 13th, people, child victims that aren't going to be able to do anything, it'll be just like go back to 2 years ago. So that's a tough one. And I hope that maybe somehow there's a miracle and he does extend it. But we'll see.
Boy, so much, John, we have to get away, not you, we have to get away from who's right, not what's right. We really need to be a place where what's right matters, not who's right. We're seeing crucial things like the Child Victims Act expire because of a person, not a system. That's disgusting. Really, really disgusting.
It is. Yes.
Right. Thank you. I hope we talk.
Thank you.
All right.
Talk
Have a great Sunday. Appreciate it. All right. Thanks. We're constantly evolving here, trying to get you more and more information. So we love that you're sticking with us and following this stuff. So one of the things we got this week was a civics thing. Civics is not government. It is all the things in a community. And one of the things that we do really well in Western New York, and we do really well in the United States compared to other countries, is helping each other through charitable organizations. So I received this week from the Niagara Falls firefighters, and we're kind of trying this new thing. I think I'm happy about posting this. But look there's Ken Tompkins presents. Ken Tompkins is the Niagara Falls City Council person who was on the show 2 to 3 weeks ago. We were glad to have him on. So here is Summerfest at the Sal Magley Stadium. Sal Magley, I think, was a Niagara Falls native who played for the Pirates, if I'm not wrong. But it's where the minor league baseball team plays as well, or at least an organizational team plays. And again, this is a date on the 15th to benefit the Niagara Falls Firefighters Toy Fund. I put it up there because this is civics. Again, this is what we do well in Western New York. And happy to do more of it each week. So thanks to everybody who came on today. Thanks to Mark. Always appreciate his time. When you can get a real professional journalist to give you a few minutes of your time, you have to take it. Angelo Morinello is a fly on the wall in Albany for the only second time in our history and the first time in 100 years that we're going to go through an impeachment of the governor. Unfortunately, as John Ristano just told us, the entire world comes to a halt in New York State because the governor has a problem. This stuff it should be a what's right, not who's right. Unfortunately, it's not. But anyway, fantastic to talk to all three guys this morning. We'll see you again next week. Thanks.